Planes and airports are at high risk of being struck by lightning. And while it's rare for these incidents to cause major damage or injury, there have been some exceptions to that rule. It is actually estimated that an airplane is struck by lightning about once every 1,000 hours of flight time. So, what happens if a plane gets hit by lightning? Let's take a look at a few cases of planes getting zapped to find out. United Airlines Flight 149 was flying from Denver International Airport to George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston when the Boeing 737-300 they were flying on was struck by a bolt of lightning. The impact was so powerful that the cockpit windows shattered, which allowed an explosive decompression to occur. This ended up causing oxygen masks to deploy. As you can imagine, this was quite a shock to the pilots, especially since they had no idea that their plane had just been struck by lightning. When the plane was finally inspected, it was found that the strike had affected several of the plane's systems, including the indicators for the altitude, the autopilot system, as well as the air data computer. In addition to that, the lightning strike had also caused a small hole to appear on the side of the aircraft. Since the plane was only a few thousand feet away from landing when this happened, the pilots were able to keep control of the situation and land the plane safely. However, it goes without saying that a lightning strike like this could be catastrophic if it were to happen at a higher altitude where there wasn't an airport nearby. In another incident involving a Boeing 737, this time a 737-800, a bolt of lightning struck the plane and broke through the electronic centralized aircraft monitoring system. This meant that all the plane's warning lights turned on at the same time, which obviously would make it difficult for the pilots to figure out exactly what was wrong. Fortunately, the pilots stayed calm and made their way to an airport where they were able to land the plane safely. These are only two examples of relatively minor lightning strikes that still manage to cause a lot of problems. But what happens if a plane is struck by a more powerful bolt of lightning? Well, we have some answers thanks to one pilot who shared his experience with the world. On June 2006, Captain Chesley Sullenberger was piloting a U.S. Airways Airbus A320 from Puerto Rico to New York when he and his passengers got a major shock. While they were approaching Kennedy International Airport, the Airbus A3 2020 they were riding in was struck by a massive bolt of lightning, which ended up knocking out all of their electrical power. As he wrote in his report, Sullenberger stated that the first thing he noticed after the strike was the smell of burnt insulation. He then lost the engine instruments and the plane's emergency lights came on. Although Sully, as he's better known, had never been in a situation like this before, he was able to stay cool and bring the plane down safely. When interviewed about the situation, Sully explained how he was able to land the plane despite the fact that they had no power. He said, "The reason we're able to glide indefinitely is because we don't need power to fly. You don't need power to keep the airplane up. All you need to do is keep the wings level and the nose up and you'll continue to glide." Thanks to his quick thinking, all 155 people on board the Airbus A320 survived. While most lightning strikes don't have such a happy ending, it's not very common for them to be fatal. One of the reasons for this is the fact that airplanes are built to withstand lightning strikes. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, commercial airplanes are designed to be struck by lightning about once every 10,000 hours of flight. And they are built to withstand 100 Class 1 lightning strikes, which are considered to be the most intense kind. There are several components that go into making sure that planes can withstand these powerful natural events. For example, the fuselage and wings are built out of aluminum, which is a metal that conducts electricity. This means that any electricity that enters the plane will be quickly distributed and discharged, meaning that it won't cause any major damage. Additionally, planes also have a ground connection through their landing gear, which helps to dissipate electricity. Despite the fact that planes are built to withstand lightning strikes, this doesn't mean that they aren't damaged at all by them. Sometimes the immense amount of heat produced by a lightning strike is enough to damage the sensitive electronics on board a plane. And in extreme cases, the electricity can affect a plane's structure. One of the most famous cases of a lightning strike damaging a plane occurred back in 2002 when an American Airlines MD-83 was struck by a bolt of lightning during a thunderstorm over the Atlantic Ocean. After struggling to maintain altitude, the pilots decided to turn back and head to the airport they had taken off from. As they were approaching the airport, the pilots were shocked to see smoke coming from the left side of the plane. They quickly landed the plane and evacuated the passengers. When they looked around to see what had happened, they discovered that the lightning strike had melted a hole in the side of the plane. This isn't the only time something like this has happened. In 1963, a woman was killed after a bolt of lightning struck her private plane and burned a hole in the roof of the aircraft. In another incident in 1977, 2 people were killed when their plane was struck by lightning while they were trying to take off. And in 1998, 4 people were killed after a plane was struck by lightning twice in a row, which ended up starting a fire on board the aircraft. But what if a passenger plane were to be struck by a massive bolt of lightning that somehow manages to get through all of the safety mechanisms that are put in place to protect against these events? In that case, we might have to look to nature for some answers. While it's extremely rare for a lightning strike to take down a plane, it's much more common for them to take down trees. That's because the main components of a tree, namely its water and sap, are both excellent conductors of electricity. And although trees have several mechanisms in place to protect themselves from lightning strikes, such as thick bark and resin, they aren't foolproof. When a lightning bolt strikes a tree, it can burn the outer layers of the tree, but many times it doesn't kill the tree outright. Instead, the lightning bolt causes the tree to channel the electricity through its core and into the ground, which ends up fertilizing the surrounding soil. This is why if you look around a tree that's been struck by lightning, you'll often see new shoots growing. So, what would happen to a plane if it were struck by a lightning bolt that was powerful enough to get past all of the safety measures that are in place? Well, if the bolt were to pass through the body of the plane, it would likely burn anything that it came into contact with and would probably end up melting parts of the plane. It would also likely start a fire, which would make things even worse. However, if the lightning were to follow the path of least resistance, which is what it does in a tree, it would end up going through the body of the plane and into the ground. If this were to happen, it would likely cause the plane to skid off the runway and crash. Whether or not this will be enough to kill everyone on board depends on the severity of the crash. It's important to remember that planes are built to withstand the immense heat generated by lightning strikes, but they aren't necessarily built to withstand the forces that come with a plane crash. In short, getting struck by lightning wouldn't necessarily mean the end of your life, but crashing afterwards might. Now watch. Most dangerous places to be when lightning strikes. Or check out how to survive a plane crash.